the election, the presidential election, as we get closer to the last day to vote. But let's start there because we could not get any further this episode without a dumb shit moment that literally happened this weekend. For folks who don't know, what happened, Margo?
So Trump was at either a rally in Pennsylvania, it was in Pennsylvania, home of Arnold Palmer, apparently.
And can I just
Also,
say something? He went on for like 30 minutes about Arnold Palmer.
okay, first of all, I didn't even know Arnold Palmer was a real person. Second of all, I just thought it was a lemonade iced tea drink at the bar, right? And he went on and on and on about Arnold Palmer and then talked about Arnold's private parts.
He did. He said one thing about Arnold. He said, all the guys go in the shower with him and they come out, they say, woo, that Arnold. Yeah. The
But you
big
know
one in
what's
the room.
okay? I really don't want to give this more airtime than it already has, but the fact that it's not a disqualifying event, right? Like we don't speak about people's private parts. Like that's not an appropriate thing for anyone to do.
Oh, Margo, no, that's because you're woke.
Part of the liberal media that is against making people feel self-conscious about their genitalia.
Yeah, you care about bodily autonomy. What's wrong with you? We don't do that no more.
Respecting the dead.
Girl, please. Who cares? That's locker room talk. It's not a big deal. It's just the woke media that have a problem with it. It's so sad, because I just told you that I was numb. I was just like, more of the same. Also, because I really genuinely feel that in some weird, twisted way, his base loves things like that. They
Which is
love
also so confusing. But yes, you're right. It's not a disqualifying event, clearly.
clearly. I mean, because the 34 felonies weren't.
So the party of law and order, the party of family values, the party of children, the party of appropriate education and books and learning. Go ahead, make fun of people's or talk about people's bodies.
But because you know what it also was, It was a compliment. And it was a way of demonstrating this person's like maleness and his manhood. And so it was really an assertion of the patriarchy and how Trump himself is an alpha male, and he was great friends with the most alpha male of them all because he was endowed. So
And
by
again, the kind of double standard. Who else could speak like that and get away with it?
who, and we also have to mention dumb shit. Is this time it's not what he said, but what he did, and why people are starting to believe that there is something going on with his cognitive abilities about how he ended a rally 30 minutes early. He
And
actually
then danced.
and then danced. He played Ave Maria, I believe. I know he played YMCA. I know he played at YMCA,
Wait,
but
Tashira, do
didn't
you
do the
think he's
dance.
gonna come out?
Come.
Wait, is this like
Talk about a dog whistle, bitch. Could you imagine?
Can you imagine if he came out right before the election?
Oh, girl, between the comment about Arnold Palmer and the YMCA, and the fact that he's still self-tanning. I mean, I'm not saying in isolation those things could indicate that, but when you put them together, we may be on to something. You heard it here first, good people at Justice.
Sure.
So not Trump, not Trump. And I'm actually very happy about that because we don't need another George Santos. But it does not mean that there is not a continuing threat to the US democracy. And this time, it is not just Donald Trump. Some would say it is another person, a third party candidate that just keeps coming back around, then around, then around. Mark, can you set the stage for us, please?
Yeah, so we've had some kind of tertiary conversations around third-party candidates, not directly about this election, but you've often talked about it, about how the two-party system doesn't serve us. And so this is where we enter the chat around this election. And the third-party candidate who's still running is Jill Stein. We had another third-party candidate, Robert Kennedy, who also was a threat in certain ways, but his campaign ended, and he's throwing his support behind Trump, of course, which is deeply disappointing, but also affirming about how we can swing around in this pendulum, and particularly these adjacent communities that you and I kind of can view around wellness and identity and all the things kind of go so far left that sometimes they go right.
And let me just say, so to the point about RFK and go so left till you go right, a big part of his campaign was being an anti-vaxxer, of believing all of these COVID conspiracies. And just so you all know how wild it is that this person, never heard of his name before, is now throwing his support behind Trump, who his daddy is, Margo.
He's a Kennedy.
The tried and true Democrats, the Democratic royalty in this country as such.
His family came out against him.
And they have to, just because of what this does and what this means to their legacy. And I think there's something about him and Jill Stein that they have in common, that some people who review political science or like the rise of authoritarianism might call the big lie, and that these people feel like they have knowledge, MAGA Republicans, that everybody else doesn't, that they know this secret. And if everyone else just woke up to the secret that they know, then we will live in a better place. In some kind of way that involves Jill Stein running over and over and over and over again.
Well, I mean, I think Jill Stein as a perfect kind of prototype of this third party candidate that has never won
anything. Not even I don't think she won a high school school government association presidency. She ain't won no mayor. She ain't won the school board. She ain't won nothing.
But she's dangerous because the margin with which she garners support is the margin with which we lost the election in 2016.
And she would definitely contest that. So I want to be fair, because many
Yeah,
people,
sure, she would contest it, but well,
I mean, the data are data. So don't get me wrong. I agree with you, friend. I'm just saying there are many people who are pro third party who would say we have to shift our analysis. It's not about the third party candidate taking votes away. It's about entering a different voice into the electoral process, and that always has value.
so I think this is where we sit in this moment where maybe both things can be true and there's a time and a place, and that time and place I would argue is not now.
Thank you. So that gets me to a point that I wanted to make, which was, this is not my idea. I've read this somewhere, and it may have actually been Lovey, for folks who may not know her. Please check her out. She's a really prolific online presence, like has ran Black Twitter for years, now is a New York Times bestselling author. And she actually, Margo, had a bit of a tit for tat with Jill Stein, where she posted something on IG saying, where are you in between the time when it's time to run for presidency? So as a party, the Green Party, what are you doing on the down ballot? How are you part of a progressive caucus of Democrats, if at all? I mean, even AOC has distanced herself from
Totally.
and from Jill Stein. So it just feels like you're a drifter and a narcissist who just wants media attention every 4 years, because we see you doing nothing, not to improve the conditions of everyday people, not to make a change by your own party's values. You just pop up in one of the most important elections in our lifetime, and you're stoking up a lot of dissent. So I completely agree.
And I would argue potentially something even more dark.
Say it.
So there's also photos of her in Russia sitting with Putin.
So I've been a bit of a Jill Stein dark hole. It gets dark down there, because she also made a comment about, and she's a medical doctor, Margo, about how we don't know the potential dangers that Wi-Fi has on the human body. And that Wi-Fi is not like screen time, which we could talk about, but actual like the rays from the Wi-Fi on our
Sure,
body.
I don't want to go down this one with you because I could get to Jill Stein
Here we go.
levels of.
So left, because of Margo.
See, guys, we're all vulnerable.
Margo's inner Jill Stein.
I worry about the internet. I worry about microplastics. I worry about our water. I worry.
So, but I thank you for bringing that up because this is how all of this becomes a very slippery slope for
And
us.
this is where we need to check each other because it's not that what she's saying doesn't have kernels of value potentially. I don't really understand her platform, to be honest, but just assuming I actually followed RFK more. I don't know. I guess I just did. And it's just that nothing is cut and dry. And that is something that as humans we don't like because we just want an answer.
Always, always. And even in her platform where the Green Party is proclaiming to give you an answer, it is not an answer because they are not going to win point blank in the period. So here's what I discovered.
So can I just say one thing before you go on?
Yeah,
they are not going to win. So a vote for her is a vote for Trump.
and that's just what an IS is. You can go around it, you can dice it, you can cut it, you can splice it. But I have not been convinced by any data that says otherwise. And I really want the radical woke left to get outside of the rhetoric and the propaganda and to step into real life. Now we can go toe to toe on that thing. See me in the comments because I have been there. When you met me, I was not voting. So I am not saying anything that I don't have firsthand knowledge and experience of. I am not condemning, I am not judging. I'm saying that the Tashira of 2008 and the one of 2024, who is more informed, sees the world differently. And I understand that nuance that you were just talking about. So
I would also just say that it's really intellectually easier to see things in black and white because we all want to feel right and justified and working and voting for social good, whatever we believe that is. Like I would imagine the people who are supporting Trump have very, very different feelings than the people who are supporting Jill Stein, but maybe not.
So Crooked Media has a podcast that I like. I forget the name of it, friend, but I will link it down below because they had a great expose on Jill Stein and they chronicled that time, that visit. And here's where the narcissism comes into play and the grifter. She claimed that she was in Russia because she wanted to have conversations with Putin. And she wanted to, let him know about several pressing diplomatic issues. Who are you speaking for, Jill Stein? Only to get there. And they said, well, did you speak to him? And she said, no, I didn't have the chance. They said, well, was there an interpreter there? She said, no, there wasn't an interpreter there. So you were just there for the photo op to have this self-importance and to be an op, quite honestly, because as you said, we know the ways in which Russia is interfering in the election. On top of her also being part of the election deniers. And I didn't realize that, Margo. And she was raising money, saying that she was going to put all this money into a recount, which never happened, by the way. Unwell, to the point where her family also has one of her sons specifically was quoted, did not want to give his name for fear of reprisal in his real life, asked her not to run again. And she refused. And here we are.
And so I think there's two questions. Like, what good does she feel is coming out of her running now, in this moment? What is she trying to achieve? What social issues or inequality or lack of access is she hoping to achieve through her candidacy? And if we can't answer any of that, and it's only her image, it's only her likeness, it's only her popularity, it's only her getting, people to populate auditoriums and cheer for her. And
it has been documented that there are many Republicans who have funded and made large contributions to her campaign.
yeah, Trump has even said, I love this woman, Jill Stein, because he knows
Yep. Trump and Cornel West. I mean, Cornel West and Jill Stein. Trump was like, go team, go, because he knows the way they will divide the vote on the left. So while I may not be able to articulate a platform, one that feels like actionable and practical by Jill Stein, two things. Number one, I do not want to say that what that means is that we're bedfellows with the Democratic Party, part and parcel. We are very critical of both parties, obviously. We just recognize where we are in this moment. But the second thing is, to be fair, I think her loudest kind of campaign slogan that she is rallying young people around, especially, is what seems to be a pro-Palestinian message. And so we wanted to bring that into the chat because we know that that has been a big criticism of Kamala and the Democratic Party this election.
Absolutely. So I would also then ask, if a vote for Jill Stein is a vote for Trump, do folks truly believe that we can get to a place of a ceasefire and a two-state solution under President Trump? Someone who has categorically said that he basically would like continue eviscerating Palestine and is bedfellows with Netanyahu.
100%. They're two sides of the same coin. And so I just don't want us to cut off our nose to spite our face. And trust me, I get it, right? We are so beat down by electoral politics in this country. The country is so extremely polarized right now. And so it would make sense that, to your point earlier, Margo, we're looking for a way out. Anything other than what's in front of us. But y'all, this ain't it. I promise you, no matter how sexy and enticing it looks, this ain't it. And two things. Number one, the Working Families Party, which is a party that, in my opinion, is really aligned with my values as far as things I care about in this country, has come out in support of Kamala Harris, definitely a left progressive movement. And so has the Uncommitted movement, which is a party that is, or a group that is full of Palestinian Americans who was pushing and continues to push a Kamala Harris, a Biden administration currently on this issue. They have come out and said it will get worse and harder for us to organize under Trump. There are people whose voices I respect on this issue who are saying it is about Kamala Harris in this moment for president. That is who I am trusting right now, not a damn Jill Stein. I don't even know who is she.
The other thing that just seems so terrifying about this moment in this particular context is the top of the ticket, and our federal government, our country is really big and really, it has a lot. We have the executive branch, we have the judicial branch, we have the legislative branch. Those branches theoretically, particularly around international diplomacy, have to kind of work in, you know, if you're sending aid to different countries, that has to be approved by the legislature. That work takes understanding, takes knowledge. And it's not that, let me just say it, the only person who has the capacity and the experience to do that is Vice President Harris.
That's on the ticket right now, friend.
You don't have to agree with everything she does. I just don't, it just seems like such a misaligned time to focus on this, like not on this issue. This is a very important issue. But if this is the issue that we're voting on, or that young people are voting on, or the far left is voting on, there's only one candidate who could even move the needle.
And that's why I say cutting off your nose to spite your face. This is not the time for you to have like a symbolic vote.
Right. Like you protesting by not voting or voting for Trump or voting for Jill Stein is really harmful for your cause.
For the very cause that you proclaim to care about. And I'm sure there are people who are hearing this who are going to be very upset, who will have a lot to say that is different from our opinions. Go off, friend. You have the right to it. But again, as two attorneys here who are at a big age, we have not seen a convincing argument on the other side because the facts are the facts. the data are the data. There is a marked difference between these two candidates and the world that we will live in, not just in the next 4 years, but we already know what is the MAGA Republicans have given us, their blueprint, their game plan. We have it.
Project 2025 is very real. And I also feel like much of the rhetoric, particularly on the far left and particularly around Gaza, is set up by MAGA Republicans. I know I'm spinning into some conspiracy, but it just doesn't make any sense. If you really are undecided because you feel so conflicted about Vice President Harris, not voting or voting for a third party or voting for Trump is literally setting fire to your cause.
It's setting fire to your cause. I mean, there's just no other way. If that is the strongest thing that is moving you currently, you are doing nothing to help the thing that is the single issue that you proclaim to care about. And I think that's where the privilege of the activism actually is coming from. That's where the privilege of the activism, because what I wonder is if you ask Palestinian Americans or those who are on the ground in Gaza facing horrific conditions, if that's what they would want, they may have a different opinion. They may say use every resource you can to help end the decimation of my people.
And please don't vote in Donald Trump.
Because they understand what that would mean. I mean, that's what the uncommitted movement has said. So again, it shouldn't be that hard for 1 + 1 to equal 2, yet we're here. And to your point, we will have another episode as we head towards the election around mis and disinformation, because Margo, when I tell you they got Black influencers in a chokehold, baby. I just saw something over the weekend where this woman named Alexis Scott from Love and Hip Hop went on the radio saying she was voting for Donald Trump.
Well, think about Amber Rose.
So they're just falling like dominoes. And what we haven't talked about on the podcast that I'm hearing a lot of whisperings of is for those gateway consumers of misinformation, a lot of the rhetoric online is around Trump gave me a stimulus check. I got a Trump check. So that's why I want Trump to be back in office.
Okay, well, we need to talk about that.
I doubt it is anyone who might be listening to us, but what I do know is we all know people who are victims of dis and misinformation, and so we definitely want to dig deeper in that. In the meantime, anything else to say about Jill Stein?
Jill, please kindly put your support behind Vice President Harris and let us elect a Democratic female president who's going to help move the world towards a ceasefire.
Yeah, I could say things a lot worse, but this time I'm gonna let you have the last word, friend, because I don't get demonetized. All right.
Okay.
Thank you all for watching. We'll see you soon. Thanks for listening to justUS. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to learn more about our podcast, be sure to check us out on our website at justuspodcast.com. You can also reach out to us there if you want to be featured on the show, or if you have a business or a product that you think would be a good fit for our audience. Thanks again for listening.